Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on project integration management in line with the PMBoK. My name is Rajiv Kumar, and as you can see that my brief background is I'm fundamentally the electronics engineer by background, and I did my MBA, and I'm PMP and Prince 2 certified, and I have been taking PMP trainings for long. So far, I must have covered almost 75 training sessions. That's just about me. Uh, See, project integration management. Now, project integration management is very important chapter and very important area from the project management point of view. I mean, there is nothing specific like we are discussing scope, cost, HR. I'm sure I think many of you would be familiar with the project management body of knowledge. So our all discussions are in line with that. So project integration management is basically it includes the process and activities to coordinate and unify various project management processes. As you can see that the various project management processes can be of HR, can be of communication, can be of time, can be of cost, can be of scoping, can be of stakeholder management, etc. So there are various areas where the project management from the PMI standard, from the PMBoK standard, it is divided into. So project integration management coordinates and unify all these processes. Unify means what does it mean? I mean, when I say unify, what does it mean? What is the meaning of the unification? The meaning of the unification is that these processes are not executed, are not seen in isolation always, right? These processes have dependence on each other. For example, if you have got a very stringent quality criteria to be met, and the acceptance criteria of the customer is very stringent, so you have a risk. Accordingly, you may have to hire some consultants, you may have to hire subject matter experts, right? And those subject matter experts may cost you, right? You may need some time to get those. So all these are basically cannot be seen in isolation, so they are all integrated with each other, right? And the project management processes in the course of initiation of the project, planning of the project, execution of the project, controlling of the project, they also don't happen it in isolation. They all interact with each other. So the primary and the main role of the project manager is in fact lies in the integration of the project management, right? Definitely he is involved in all the other knowledge areas, but then there are support staff, admin staff, there are other departments also, but his role is that all these areas are integrated well and the project moves in a cohesive way, right? So I've just given you a sort of an example of the project unification and the cohesion and integration. In the heart and in the intrinsic, basically the essential core of this is PDCA concept. What is PDCA? Plan, do, check, act. Plan, do, check, act. So you plan for the project, you undertake the execution, and while you are executing, you are actually monitoring the project and controlling the project. And while you are controlling, actually you take certain actions. With those actions, your original project management plan may get revised. So it may get revised until the deliverables are in place and deliverables are in line with the project management plan. And thereafter, they are accepted and project is closed. So the PDCA is actually a quality concept, but it is in the heart of the project management as well. And as you can see that there is a hexagon below. So the project manager's role is also to balance these constraints: scope, cost, time, customer satisfaction, risk, and quality. Earlier there it used to be a triple constraint which used to majorly cover the scope, cost, time, but now it has been included, the customer satisfaction and the risk management is also included in this. So the project managers basically the role is, and his challenge is to balance these constraints, right? If the scope is increased, definitely he may need more time or he may need more cost, but if the time cannot be negotiated, the time is sacrosanct. He may need to add more resources, which may need to add more cost. So accordingly, and if the cost is, honestly, if the cost is also a constraint for us, right, the quality may suffer, right? The quality may suffer or the customer satisfaction may suffer. So they are all integrated together. They are basically, the project manager's role is to balance these constraints, and while balancing these constraints, he has to manage and coordinate and integrate these all the processes of the project management so that they work in a cohesive and a unified way. It is not that all these processes are done in an isolation way, right? So I will basically just take you step by step. Basically the process group rather is of initiation of the project. Initiation of the project, and the process in the initiation, in the integration management, is to initiate the project. Why do we need to initiate the project? Why don't we straight away jump onto the execution by doing some preliminary planning, etc.? As it is, we know that we have been doing these projects for very long, right? So what is the point in initiation of the project every time? Once you initiate it, first of all, it ascertains that the project at higher level is feasible, in the given constraints. When I say basically it is feasible, it has been checked, the economic feasibility, the technical feasibility, and all other type of feasibility, legal feasibility, all other type of feasibilities are checked, and it is seen that the constraints what we have got, constraints in the sense what is limiting us, time may be limiting us, resources may be limiting us, cost may be limiting us. So the constraints in which we operate, under that is the project what we are going to undertake, is it feasible or not feasible, right? So make sure that it is feasible, and then we formally authorize to start the this project, giving confirmation. Yes, the project manager is now authorized to spend the organization resources and spend the time and cost, take the funds from the organization to implement this project. It is the formal authorization. And in this, basically what we are saying is we are assigning the project manager and spelling out his authority and the responsibility levels. To what level he is responsible, right? Can he manage, can he basically decide on the budget of the project? Can he take the people, right? Can he take all kind of people, or till certain level beyond which he has to take the permission of the sponsor or the senior management? So what are his responsibility levels and what are his authority levels, right? This all depends on the type of organization the project manager is also in. If he is in a strong matrix type of a if he's a project manager of a projectized organization or a strong matrix organization, wherein he is given a lot of authority and responsibility. If he is in a balanced matrix type of an organization, he has to share this authority with the functional managers. So this is about the authority of the project manager. And then the project charter also describes the project purpose and justification. What was the purpose? What was the reason for which we started? What is the justification? What have we done all the cash flow analysis? Have we talked to all the subject matter experts? Have they looked it into very in detail, right? So this basically is nothing but a business case. A business case is the extent of the opportunity, the size of the opportunity, plus the cash flow analysis. When we say cash flow analysis, I'm sure some of you would be very well aware of these terms like payback period, the amount of time it would take to get the money back, right? Or the what would be our ROI, return on investment, right? And there are certain technical words also like NPV, IRR, etc. But ultimately it boils down to be what is going to be our returns from the product of the project or the service of the project which we are going to roll out, and for which purpose for which this project is being started. So what is the business case? At this point of time, and at all point of times, project manager is very well aware of the business case. At any point of time, if the business case is getting threatened, if he feels that the purpose for which the project was started, that itself is under threat, then he should raise the alarm and speak to the sponsor. Project charter also briefly discusses about the major deliverables of the project, what are going to be the major milestones, what are going to be the major deliverables. And it also mentions the assumptions. What are assumptions? Assumptions are basically the hypothesis. Assumptions are the hypothesis, right? I mean that today we feel that this is correct, right? But tomorrow it may or may not be correct. But today we are taking this decision based on these assumptions. We feel that it would happen like this. It is a correct way of doing it, right? And the constraints, as I told you, that limiting factors, something which is limiting you. Scope can limit you, time can limit you, cost can limit you, resources can limit you. And also mention the high level risks. There can be a government risk, there can be a technology type of a risk. You are coming out with a product which probably is on the verge of getting obsolete, right? So be aware of that. Be aware of that. It depends on the taste of the people. Suppose if you are starting a restaurant, right? In which area, right? Will there be a lot of competition? Will it be able to justify the business case? So all that is mentioned in the project charter. See, project charter is actually a testimony, basically is a document not more than 2 to 3 pages, right? For medium size project, which is based at all the people, senior people, especially the sponsors, key stakeholders, customer, senior management, project management, they are all on the same plane that yes, we have discussed, we have deliberated, and we are going to do this project, right? Given the constraints, we are very well aware of that. So project charter also integrates all these knowledge areas. What are the knowledge areas? See, knowledge area is a term which is basically used from the project management body of knowledge, that is PMBoK. And for the just for everyone's information of everyone, their knowledge areas which are there are scope, time, cost, risk, stakeholder, procurement, communication, human resource, quality. So there are 10 knowledge areas. In fact, integration management is one of the knowledge areas. So project charter, what it does is it integrates all the knowledge areas. When it says integration, that does not mean only to compile the scope there, to mention the time, to mention the cost. No, it is just not only mentioning. It means the people have brainstormed, deliberated, discussed with the subject matter experts, seen all the scenarios of the high level risk, etc., and consciously taken the decision, yes, that this is the project we are going ahead. And that is where basically all these areas are integrated also in the project charter, right? As per the project charter, now project charter is a guiding document. Project charter is a guiding document, and as per the project charter, you need to make a detailed project management plan. Detailed, right? Now this is not going to be a 2 3 page document, and it is going to be a detailed project management plan. So this is the P part of the PDCA. It documents a strategy for managing the project in terms of how part. See, the how is underlined. How the project is going to be executed, controlled, as well as closed also. So how the project is going to be implemented in terms of execution, monitoring and control, and closing. And it integrates the individual subsidiary management plans. Once again, the same concept, what I was just trying to explain it to you in the project charter, same concept. When it says integrates the individual subsidiary management plan, which means what are subsidiary management plans? Subsidiary plan management plans of scope, time, cost, quality, human resource, communication, risk, procurement, stakeholder management. So you need to make the subsidiary plans of these, right? And please note that it is not only a question of 10 people making the 10 subsidiary plans and giving it to the project manager, and project manager's job is only to compile. No, not at all. These subsidiary plans are also made by iterative process. Iterative process. They are optimized by discussions with each other, by seeing the concept, by seeing the impact of each other, right? While you are deciding the time, you should know the scope. While you are deciding the cost, you should know that how much time it is going to take, as well as how much scope is going to be there, right? As well as how much risk is there, what we need to procure it from outside, what is the quality criteria which we have committed to the customer, right? What are the communication technologies which we are going to incorporate? So all that the budget will be decided, right? But if you have got a limitation of the budget which is already mentioned by the senior management, just a minute please. So so basically uh, So basically, it is not only compiling the individual plans. The individual plans itself are made after iteration and optimization with each other. So as I was mentioning, you need to make the budget keeping in mind the output of other processes. What type of people you need, what type of time it is basically going to take, what type of risks are there. But it may also be there that you have a limited budget. The contract which is signed with the customer is basically the fixed price contract, and you have got a limitation on the budget also. So at the same time, the cost will also make a push. No, you are planning for the human resource, you are planning for this communication technology, but please be aware that we don't have unlimited budget. So this is our budget also. So take the people accordingly. So which means all these processes are optimized and iterated with each other. They are not made in isolation and just compiled in a book, right? Until they are iterated, optimized with each other, that is what then only the actually project management plan will be created. And that is what it is called integrated project management plan. And that is the basic purpose of the meaning of the integration, right? So here in the integrated management plan, we have these subsidiary management plans as well as the performance baselines. We also arrive at the scope baseline, which means the scope we are going to cover, correct? And cost baseline, which means over the time till the completion of the project, how much basically we will have the budget, and what are going to be our planned expenses over the time, right? It comes in the form of a S curve, right? So cost baseline, schedule baseline also, that over the how much time it will take, and week by week or month by month, whenever we are monitoring, at this point of time how much percentage of work we should have got completed, or how many deliverables we would have made out of the total project, right? So that subsequently, when the project starts after the planning, we start measuring our performance. Are we doing the expenses as per the plan, or are we doing more? Are we completing the work as per the plan, or are we lagging behind? Are we completing the deliverables as per the time, or we are really behind schedule? Are we doing the scope which we have actually agreed with the sponsor and the customer, or we are doing unnecessarily more features? We are adding more without being asked for, right? So we need to guard ourselves so that the ultimately project performance objectives don't suffer, right? See, ultimately you all know and we all know that what is the role of the project manager. Project manager has an eye on the performance, right? He has to ensure that the project is completed with the given scope, the project or the product of the project conforms to the quality, as well as project is done within budget and within the timelines agreed upon, right? So that is the project management, right? Now also, the project management plan will speak about the roles and responsibilities of the people, right? Will speak about the operational definitions, right? The processes, the quality standards, the quality matrices, right? How will we collect the data and how we will measure the data, right? Some of the tools and techniques, how we will collect the requirements, critical path methods, how we will basically collect the communication requirements from the customer, right? What will be the relationship between the sender and the sort of a receiver while communicating with each other, correct? So how we will identify the risk, how we will prioritize them. So there are n number of tools and techniques which are given and which are used in the project management plan, which are mentioned in the project management plan and which are used in the subsequently in the project, right? So project management plan will mention all these things, and also it uses the historical information, right? The lessons learned, the mistakes which the previous project manager has done, so that we don't repeat the same thing. But when you make the project management plan, keep in mind your own organization, your own limitations, the culture of the organization, the extent of automation you have got, right? Which means what would be your speed of work, right? Is it a is it a flat structure or is it a very hierarchical structure? Is it a laid back culture or is it a very enthusiastic type of a culture, right? Bubbling culture, right? What type of tools you have got? If you don't have any tools, if you don't use any project management methodology, etc., right? Will you be able to complete the a complex project, right, within the given constraints, or will you fall flat? So this all depends on the way we are. So plan it according to keeping in mind the way you are, the way you are. Unnecessarily, we will not be unnecessarily creating an ideal environment, right, without having considered that the way our capabilities, right? So project management plans keeps these things in mind, and project management plan is supposed to be realistic, practical, and achievable. So when you actually look into the mistakes of the previous similar projects, when you look into the way we are at the same time in a type of environment which we work in, the competition, right, then your project management plan will be actually realistic, practical, and achievable. And this project management plan, as I told you, is now integrated project management plan. It is not it is not basically the isolated project management plan. Now, the next is, you have seen, we have just discussed the project management plan. So the P part, the next is doing part, which means execution, doing it, doing the part, doing the actually doing the work, right? So execution is about integration of all the efforts of doing work according to the project management plan and making deliverables. So integrating all the efforts of doing work. See, project manager is not necessarily doing the work himself. In any case, for the large projects, for the complex project, for the multi-location project, project manager is not available at the same location of the work, of the place where the work is being done, right? But still he manages the work. So he has to integrate all the efforts of doing the work. Integration means he has to ensure that the project management plan is made, right? He has to ensure that the quality is ensured. He has to acquire the team. He has to make sure that the team is motivated, developed in the sense that team is trained, right, for the job which they are supposed to do, correct? And team is aware of the ground rules, which is basically expected of all the people. And he does undertake some team building activities and reward and recognition programs, etc., right, to make sure that team remains a motivated, a cohesive unit, right? And at the same time he deals with the team, individuals, group, vendors, right, so that basically to manage their day-to-day issues, to resolve their issues. The issues can be technical issues, the issues can be personal issues, the issues can be related to the conflict arising out of the schedule misunderstanding, conflict arising out of the cost disagreements, right? So there can be various issues which basically the project manager has to resolve it on the day-to-day basis. So he has to acquire the team, he has to develop the team, he has to manage the team, he has to ensure that the quality is ensured. So he may have to do a audit, right? He may have to do the audit, he may have to look into the basically the processes, right? Over the period, the processes, how it can be shortened, how it can be made more meaningful, right? So he has to make sure that also. So he has to ensure the quality, and he has to ensure also that the quality control, the deliverables which are made as per the technical requirements, as per the technical specifications which are there, right? So in doing that, he has to ensure that people share the information, people basically communicate to each other openly, people have the interdependencies, so the maturity on the interdependency is shown, right? So without any hesitation, he needs to ensure that the communication is very, very proper, and he has to communicate the reports regularly to the stakeholders as per their requirements. He has to also ensure that if the any of the component is to be procured from outside, right, or any of the work which is to be given outside, he has to make sure that that is given. He has to conduct that procurement, he has to conduct that procurement also, and more importantly, continuously he has to engage with the stakeholders. When he means stakeholder does not mean only the customer. Stakeholder means team, stakeholder means customer, it means vendors, suppliers, it means sponsor, it means senior management. So it means basically almost everyone on a 360-degree view. So he has to deal with the juniors, he has to meet with the seniors, right? So he has to use his interpersonal skills, he has to use his management skills, and he has to make sure that everybody understand and everybody is communicated and given the information what he wants, right? What he want. So classified confidentiality also needs to be ensured. So as I said that in doing the work, he has to integrate all these efforts. He has to integrate all these efforts, right? At the same time, while the project is being executed, lot of work performance related data is being created. What time the activity has taken, what cost it has incurred, how many defects have come, right? So all this is considered as a work performance data, which basically is useful in making the work performance reports, and reports are finally communicated and shared with the stakeholders, correct? Right. So this is the just about a work performance data. I'm not going into the details of these terminologies, work performance data, information, reports, etc. But by and large, this is what happens in the execution. So it acquires the people, develops and manages the team. In execution, project manager is involved in the communication, right? And project manager is also involved in improving upon the processes. It is involved in procuring the resources, right? And executing the project as a whole in an integrated way, considering the impact of each other, and not, again, emphasizing the fact, not as individual knowledge areas, not as individual knowledge areas. So it has got the impact of each others, right? So this is basically the efforts. See, the project manager, let me tell you, spends maximum time in the execution, right? Execution means his job is to coordinate the resources are available. He has to ensure that all the resources in terms of people, material, men are available. People are available to do the job, right? And the teams are communicating with each other. If anything is to be hired from outside, they are taken at the right time without delaying it, right? So this is the this is the area where he spends maximum time in doing the execution, right? So while doing the execution, so that is what it is basically. As I said, this is about the doing part. Now while executing, you will have to, rather not the may part, but you will have to, as per the project management good practices, continuously monitor and control. So first part is monitor. When will you monitor? That is mentioned in the project management plan. Will you monitor it week by week, fortnightly, monthly, quarterly? When will you monitor it, right? Or you may monitor it as per the completion of the deliverable. So once deliverable is completed, you may monitor it. So the way it is mentioned in the project management plan, you monitor it. And once you monitor it, what will you get? What are you monitoring? You are monitoring the execution and seeing that the execution is in line with the plan which we had made. If it is in line, yes, absolutely fine. But if it is not in line, you may have to see that. Initially, in the early part of the project execution, you may ignore this. You may ignore the gaps, but then the time will come, you will have to take certain actions. Now, what are these gaps? The gaps can be reflected, you can say, for the understanding sake, it is in the form of a variance. It is in the form of a variance. Now, variance is, you are measuring the execution with respect to the baselines mentioned in the project management plan. Are we doing the job as per the cost, right? The whatever we had planned, are we on schedule, or are we ahead of schedule, or are we behind schedule? Are we over budget, or we are within the budget? Have we completed the scope, and are we doing it by giving more features, or are we giving less features and not completing the job, right? So you compare your execution implementation with the baselines, right? So a formal effort is required to be in place of monitoring and controlling. This is not an informal process that whenever you want, just have a look at that, right? There is a formal process, formal effort is required to be in place of monitoring and controlling, especially in the large projects, especially in the large projects where project manager himself may not be involved in making the deliverables, and he may not be omnipresent, right? So the data has to come out of the execution. It has to be compared with the baselines, so that the variance has to be analyzed. Variance has to be analyzed. And after the analysis of these variances, whether negative variance or the positive variance, right? Especially the negative variances, slowly and slowly you will come to the situation and conclusion that we need to do something. And that need to do something will be in the form of a repairing the defect, taking corrective action, or taking some preventive action, right? Repairing the defect means immediately repair the defect, right? And then lets the things back. Corrective action is now take certain corrective action so that the project comes in line with the project management plan. You have taken certain action, corrective action, so that, for example, increasing the resources, increasing the time. Now revised timelines are in line with the our implementation, the way we are going it. So you have taken certain corrective action, right? Or why are we falling behind? Why this is a negative variance, right? Once we have done it, at least next time onwards, we should not repeat the same things, right? So make certain efforts to do preventive action, right? So this is preventive actions, right? How is it going to be possible? Until you get the data and make certain information and get certain variance in information from the field, correct? So this is basically the defect repair, corrective action, or preventive action. Monitoring and control includes activities like analysis, tracking of risks, controlling of quality. So you monitor and control on all the parameters. When I say execution, you monitor and control the execution, which means basically we are monitoring and control not only our implementation, but is it that the risks are increasing? Is it that we are getting more more bugs, right? Is it that we are giving more scope? Is it that we are more time we are taking? Is it that we are incurring more cost, right? So is it that our people are getting de-enthusiastic, right? They are not getting, they are not enthusiastic now about the project. So stakeholder engagement is getting low, right? People are not getting the communication properly. So there are a lot of communication gaps are also there. So all these things we need to control. And you see that again, I would tell you the job of the integration, concept of the integration. If you feel that there is a communication gap, you need to do something. You may have to incorporate certain video endpoints. You may have to incorporate an implementation of the ERP, right? Or some audio conferencing tools, etc., etc. Something needs to be done. Something needs to be done, right? So when you are doing that, basically you may have to incur cost. You may have to incur more timelines. Similarly, if there are risks are there, suddenly you find more risks in terms of competency level of the people, in terms of some people leaving the organization, in terms of faulty material, in terms of delay from the procurement, from the contractor, not doing the job properly. What do you get? These are all risks which may throw your project out of track, right? What do you need to do? What do you need? You need to respond. You need to respond. You may have to have some backups, right? You may have to change the vendor in between. So changing the vendor, changing or requiring the people, getting the backup, etc., does not happen immediately, right? The people are not available, the vendors are not available off the shelf, right? It may have to involve cost. It may have to involve timelines also, right? So all these things are related, integrated with each other. It effect of one area, effect of one monitoring and controlling activity will have an impact on the other activities also. So the baselines needs to be revised. So how will it happen? So that is where again you see the total concept of the integration is coming time to time. Again, project from project charter to the project management plan to the execution and to the monitoring and control also. So there is a project basically moving in an integrated way, right? So we were just discussing about that if you happen to have some more resources, if you happen to change the vendor, if you happen to change the material, right? Or for that matter, if the customer has asked for more scope or he modifies the scope, right? These are all basically will require certain corrective actions, right? So what will happen? How do it needs to be done? The act part. Now is the act part, right? So plan, do, check, and now act, right? So it happens through integrated change control. Integrated change control. Once again, the word integrated is coming again. So the project is basically moving in an integrated way, right? The effect of one, if it is not reflected on the other area, the project will not move in a unified cohesive way, right? It will be just only that you are taking care of one area and it is not getting reflected on the other area. Means you have taken some steps but then you have not got the cost revised or the timelines revised, right, etc. So this is basically the integrated change control. And changes, I'm sure, I think most of you would be knowing this. Changes are part of the one characteristics of the project, which is progressive elaboration, right? Progressive elaboration. Changes, some projects are plan driven, some projects are change driven. So changes are basically part of the progressive elaboration. But in this waterfall method of project management, right, we changes, basically unnecessary changes, mark the word unnecessary, right, which could have been prevented earlier by way of better engagement with the stakeholders, by way of better collection of the requirements. Those unnecessary changes could have been avoided. So changes in any case are part of the project progressive elaboration. Changes requests are first evaluated for its impact on the quality of the balanced job. Is it increasing more risk? It is increasing the schedule timelines. Is it increasing the cost? Do we need more resources? Is it going to impact in any way the customer satisfaction, etc.? So change requests are evaluated by the subject matter experts, and this report is given to the change control board, who looks it into, right? And who looks it into and sees that is it really required to be done, or they may take a decision that we may handle a separate project, right? So they will basically, they will either approve it or reject it. So as it is mentioned, changes are inevitable, but unnecessary changes which could have been avoided should have been avoided. Changes, however, are inevitable. There would be some, that's a nature of the projects. Changes, however, at the later stage can be expensive to implement, and frequent changes can derail the project plan as well, right? So changes needs to be done. They are inevitable, but then you should guard also that how could the unnecessary changes be avoided. So you have seen that the cycle of plan, do, check, act. We have, first of all, we initiated the project, we planned the project, right? As per the plan, we implemented it, right? And after the implementation, and during the implementation rather, we are checking, we are monitoring, and we are controlling, right? And based on the results of the monitoring and controlling, then we are taking an action in the form of a implementation of the change request, right? So it is very intrinsic and core thing of the project management, and it is again and again saying that project management is not done in isolation. So the project manager on a typical day, it is not that on this day he will plan it, on the next day he will execute it, then the next third day he is going to monitor and control, right? And then the fourth day he is basically making efforts to no, he will basically on the same day itself, he may be seen in doing the planning activity, right? At the same time he's acquiring the after a few hours he's acquiring the team, or he's discussing the process, and while he may be looking into the work performance reports, which means that he's trying to look into the monitoring and control, and thereafter he may be recommending the changes to the change control board also. So it is just only that as per the project management structure, as per the project management book, as per the is just a sort of a lecture, right? These processes are mentioned separately, but that does not mean that they are implemented, and in a practical scenario also they are done in a separate way, right? They are all working in an integrated way. So the project manager has got an eye on all these things. He knows the philosophy of the project management, but at the same time he knows where am I, what am I doing it, what is going to be the result of this, right? So that is what the integrated the project moves in an integrated way. And finally, the closing part, the closing. So before the PDCA, there was initiation, and after the PDCA, there is finally the closing. And what is the meaning of the closing? We all close the projects. Closing of the project not only means that getting the sign off from the customer and running it, right? Structured closing means basically handing over, transition, the product or the result or the service infrastructure which you have made, right, to the customer. At the same time, hand holding his teams, training them, migrating the system, integrating it with the legacy systems, correct? Making sure that all the records which you have made it, all the type of records, quality record, transactional records, goods receipt records, financial records, all the records are updated, risk records, and archived in the record management systems. And then documenting the lessons learned, so that at least the future project manager, at least the people who are involved in the next phase, they don't repeat the same mistake. They don't repeat the same mistake. So that is how, in fact, all the big organizations get matured. All the big organizations get matured, that basically they have a vast knowledge, they have a vast experience. According to the lessons learned, they have revise their processes, they have revised the way of doing it, right? So the lessons learned documentation for any mature organization is important. measure the customer satisfaction, right, and communicate about the final handover to all the stakeholders. Yeah, stakeholders may involve the banks, government organizations, right? The customer in any case, right? Or some any other stakeholders who have got the interest in your project. And finally releasing the team, right? And finally releasing the team because the project is a temporary endeavor, right? It has got it has to finish somewhere, right? And the team is go back team needs to go back to either to a new project or back to their function for doing the job whichever is given by the functional manager to them. So this is basically a structured closing. So I am not talking of just only signing it off and running it away. So just to emphasize more, and although we have just actually in a sort of we have covered this, the key roles of the project manager is, and the primary role is to coordinate while keeping an eye on the performance objectives. Performance objectives is very important, right? We are just not here for gathering the knowledge. The project manager's role is to keep an eye on the performance objective, and by keeping the eye on the performance objectives he has to coordinate. He has to coordinate in the sense of resources, coordinate in the sense of people are involved in the planning, they are collecting the requirements, they are making the scope, right? They are making basically discussion and brainstorming, they are sharing, they are open to each other, the teams are required, right, accordingly at the right time. So this is all coordination in the project. The primary role remains for the project manager. He needs to communicate and engage appropriately with the stakeholders. You see, the work appropriately is important, not inappropriately. The people who matters more, right? He has to appropriately engage with the stakeholders, right? It's just not only a question of being very nice to everyone, right? It's just not a question of mannerism. It is basically a as per the your requirements, as per the type of stakeholders who is important, right, to your project implementation. Engage with them appropriately. Make sure that the requirements are collected by intense engagements and concerned stakeholders and quality is ensured. So we have just already discussed it, that how important is to engage with the stakeholders, right? Make sure that there are enough deliberations. Once again, the same thing which I have been emphasizing. Make sure that the project manager actually needs to make sure that in all the plannings, in all the monitoring and control, etc., right, there are no communication gaps. People, subject matter involved, experts are involved. They do deliberate, brainstorm, have focus group discussions, cross-functional discussions with involving different departments, right? All the they are involved and involved while making an integrated plan. Resources are required and developed in making a motivated, cohesive team. Changes are minimized, right? So in the waterfall method of the project management, unnecessary changes, so mark the word unnecessary once again, unnecessary changes which could have been avoided, right, are needs to be avoided. Otherwise, however, if the change is required to be done and it is a essential change and it is a required change for the interest of the project objectives also, let it be, let it be. But then changes has to go through a change control board. So project manager is thick and thin involved with all the stakeholders communicating, right? Maximum time of the project manager goes into communicating. He is coordinating and he does a macro management. At the same time, if it is involved to be if it is to be required, he does a micro management and then again comes back. So he has got a big picture. At the same time, he may get into a nitty-gritties of the project also. So that is basically the project this thing. So graphically, if you see that once again, if you see the project integration, initiation is done. Initiation is about the commitment of the senior management in authorizing and assigning the project manager. And after that, what it is done is, as per the initiation, as I was mentioning, that there is a planning. And planning, what is how part? Planning is how part. And what is basically The integrated project management plan, it contains the subsidiary plans of scope, time, cost, quality, human resource, communications, risk, procurement, stakeholder. Where have I taken these knowledge areas from? I have taken it from the PMP standard, right? PMP standard is given by the PMI. They have divided these project management and try to run these project management onto these areas, right? So once again, the project management plan is made after iteration and optimization of all these subsidiary plans. And as I was mentioning, in line with the plan, what you do is you do the execution. And what is execution? Execution is actually doing the work. Execution is about doing the work, and doing the work, acquiring the people, developing the team, communicating, engaging with the stakeholders. Okay, you can see there's another circle going back to the planning. If during the execution you are changing the process, procedure, plan, which is different from the project management plan, you may have to revise the project management plan, right? You may have to revise the project management plan. And while executing it, what you do is you do the monitoring and control. And monitoring and control is what? Checking at the appropriate time or at the end of the deliverables and controlling it. You may repair the defect and some work is redone, so the arrow is going back to the execution. Once the work is redone, again it is monitored and controlled. Again it is monitored and controlled. And you can see that while monitoring and control, there can be three type of actions: defect repair, corrective action, and preventive action. And all these things monitoring and control also results in communicating the work performance report to the stakeholders. And you can see that where this monitoring and control process is getting the inputs from, it is coming from after doing a scope control. Actually, what you do in monitoring and control, you control the scope, you control the time, you control the cost, and likewise you control the quality, right? You control the communications, you control the risk, you control the procurement, you control the stakeholders engagement, right? And see the variance, and put that into a work performance report, right? And in work performance report, what you get is what you analyze and what you find, that there is something needs to be done. Something needs to be done. The project is not going the way we want, and that something needs to be done can be in the form of a corrective action, preventive action. And what happens is that we go back to the change control board with the change request that please allow us to get more time, please allow us to have more cost, right? Customer is asking for scope modification, please allow us to have more some different people to be taken up, right? Some new resources to be taken up. So it is in the form of a change request. And so you see that the baselines, the performance baselines which are there in the planning will get revised. And as per the revised baselines, again execution, again monitoring and control, again checking it, again controlling it, right? And this is what it is called PDCA, plan, do, check, act. And once it is done, the formally the project is closed. And this is a closing is acceptance. So the key word is, for initiation it is a commitment. The planning is how part, how to execute it, how to control it, how to close it. Execution is doing the work. Monitoring and controlling is checking and controlling the work. And closing is acceptance. So that's basically that's what primarily I wanted to cover this in the integration management. And I'm sure that uh, after attending this webinar, you must have got a now good hang of that. What is actually the meaning of the integration? What is the meaning of the integration, right? So why do we call integration? Because see, some of you, if you are planning to, some of you, if you are planning to cover and appear for the PMP exam also, let me tell you, PMP exam is apart from all the things, apart from all the question answers, topics, tools and techniques, or which is covered in the training or in the PMBoK or in any in the supplementary book, but the intrinsic, people find it bit difficult to get a hang of what is integration. What is integration? Right? So the integration means the project moves in a unified and in a cohesive way. So that is the meaning of the integration. So that's it from me, and uh, I would I would just invite a few questions, but later on, in any case, you can see this webinar presentation on the website, right? So I will just invite a few questions. This one. Yeah, I think Anirban is asking me that if he can get the slides and share the recording. Yes, definitely, this would be available, and you can go through you can go into the blog portion of the KnowledgeWoods sites and see there this site, right? So you can go there and looking into this slides there, right? So I think I have answered the question of Mr. Nanda Kumar also. Okay. So, Mr. Amol is asking that where the project manager's maximum time spends. As I told you here in the session also, that his most time is spent in the execution, right? His most time in the spent in the. I mean, that does not mean even for a bit that that planning is of less importance or the other areas are of less importance. No, it is basically in the planning there are a lot of people. He has to ensure that the subject matter experts, they brainstorm, they have a focus group discussions, all the right people are involved in this, right? So as per the lot of processes, if you see that those of you who are covering the PMBoK and reading the PMBoK, out of 47 processes of the PMBoK, 24 processes though are mentioned in the planning, right? So that in any case emphasizes the importance of the project management planning in the project management. But the project manager's job uh, is project managers most time is spent in engaging with the stakeholders, in communicating, in ensuring that the resources are there. After that, if he watches the critical path, so all the critical activities are equipped with the resources, people are there, right people are taken on the board, people are following the operational definitions, are making sure that the whatever job they are doing it is as per the standards, etc., right? But that does not mean, as I said, that out of 47, 24 processes are there in the planning. So there is a large amount of emphasis is on the planning, right? So planning is very, very important for the project management, right? So the question was very specific on the project manager's time. So that's what I have answered, right? Somebody, Rashmi is asking about the business case, right? As I was telling you in the beginning also, what is business case? Business case is the purpose for which the project is being started, right? What was the reason? What was the purpose? There is a business case, especially in the commercial organizations, right? If I am investing so much, right, it has to be business. There has to be a business case, right? It cannot be that I'm just investing it without thinking of any returns, whether the return will come immediately or later on. So what is a business case? So business case has got two components: the size of the opportunity and the cash flow analysis. Cash flow analysis, some of the very regularly and heard cash flow analysis techniques are return on investments or the payback period. But as I said, then there are others also like net present value, IRR, business sort of a benefit cost ratio, opportunity cost. So that one can definitely study in the book. Since this webinar was not focused on the cash flow analysis, right? Okay, there is one more question. Uh, there was somewhere written what is earned value. Okay, what is earned value? Now earned value is a specific, basically earned value management. Earned value management is a specific technique in using in the controlling of the cost. Earned value is how much job you have done, how much job, the budgeted cost of the work performed performed. There is budgeted cost of the work planned. Against the planning, how much you have performed. So that will tell you whether you are ahead of schedule or whether you are behind schedule. Bilal is asking how the changes are different in the agile, right? See, in the agile methodology, changes are actually welcome. Changes are welcome, right? Because they thrive on the changes. In the agile methodology, especially in the software product developments, etc., it is generally assumed and it is seen that even the customer is also not much of aware of his requirements, right? His requirements, and he's not even sure that how much the product or the consultant or the company has to offer about their product. So they all have to discuss. So they'll all have to basically do a lot of brainstorming. Immediately everything is not clear, crisply clear, right? Unlike a construction of a house, for example, which can be done in a waterfall method more easily and more appropriately, where the scope is very clear, right? It can be finalized. But in the software product development, scope finalization may not be immediately possible, and it is not advisable also, because even the customer may not have that much of an idea. So it thrives on the changes, whereas in the waterfall method, the changes are taken up. After all, that is a characteristics of the project, progressive elaboration. But then you are not thriving on the changes, right? It is better to formalize the scope after all brainstorming discussions with the stakeholders about the requirement. Finalize the scope of your house construction, right? But then later on, if at all something needs to be done extra, yes, finally fine, in the interest of the customer satisfaction, it will be done. But then you don't thrive on the changes. Otherwise, changes, it can be very expensive later on. It can be very expensive later on. So you need to guard yourself regarding that also. Okay, so I think that's it. I thank you everyone for joining this webinar and uh, joining me with this session. Thank you very much.